Welcome to Finance Series with Oyekemi Ajayi. It is a pleasure to connect with you this week. I'm going to be talking about smart leverage for growth and resilience. In today's dynamic business environment, debt can be used as a strategic lever and not just a financial tool. But what is the important thing you need to note when using debt? The point is that it has to be structured wisely so that it can unlock growth, it can enhance resilience in your business, and also position the business for long-term success. As a business, you need to understand the extent of leverage or the extent of debt that is required in your business. Because when leverage is really high in a business, it can strain operations. And when it is too little, it can also limit expansion. So you need to understand when to draw the line and to know how much debt is required in your business, basically. In this series, I'm going to be talking about how a business can strike the right balance, how you can craft a debt strategy that supports agility and pros innovation in your business. This is top of mind for a lot of businesses. So I'm going to be looking at how you can strike a balance in your business between the level of debt and the level of equity, knowing what is the level of debt that I should retain, what is the right mix of debt that I should hold in my business. The first point is understand the business life cycle and the strategy that is applicable, at that stage or the stage where you are. So for example, if you are a business in the early stage or maybe in the growing phase, you may want to prioritize more of equity, right? Or maybe a convertible debt to avoid cash strain in your business. If you are a matured business, as a matured business, you've been able to generate some stable level of cash flows. There's a strong possibility that you'll be able to handle more debt than a business in the early stage. So for a matured business, there is a need to align debt strategy with the expansion plans that management is considering. Or if you are looking to grow organically, or if you're looking to even carry out a merger and acquisition, you need to be able to align this strategy with that expansion plan. What is the risk appetite in that business? And what are the industry norms? All those things need to also be taken into consideration when you're aligning your debt strategy with your goals in the business. The second point is on optimizing debt structure. Now, you need to, have a combination of short and long-term debt. Now, your long-term debt is largely used for capital investments or acquisitions, while your short-term debt should be used for working capital needs. So you need to ensure that there is no mismatch in your business and you use long-term funds for investment or acquisitions, your capex basically. You use your long-term debt for those so that you don't strain your cash flows in the business. You need to also understand that you could have a fixed or a floating rate. Now, I've talked about it in the previous presentation. So if it is a fixed rate, it could offer predictability because you know that yes, it is 10% that is my interest rate, for example, and that's what we're working with. But if it is a floating rate, you know that it's subject to change as the market changes, basically. So if you have a floating rate, you could be lucky. Rates could swing to your favor and it could swing the other way. But you just need to take all this into consideration because it would help you when you are calculating your cost of debt or your implied cost of debt within the business. And also when you are planning your cash flows in the business. The third point is on maintaining a healthy leverage ratio. So how can you do this? You need to monitor key metrics like your debt equity. You need to observe, okay, are we going beyond maybe a 70-30 or a 65-45? Are we going beyond this? Where are we? So you need to monitor that. Your interest coverage ratio. Remember, for some loans that you have, there are covenants that may say, okay, your interest coverage ratio should be this X times this, or you should cover your EBITDA maybe 3 times or 4 times. So you need to note all those things so that when you are even planning, you are reviewing your performance on a monthly basis, you must ensure that you meet all those requirements, all those covenants. The third metric will be your net debt to EBITDA. So you need to ensure that you monitor all this effectively. The fourth point is on making an attempt, right, or trying to build in flexibility in these covenants that we have. Though I know that sometimes you might not have a control over it, but you can always try to negotiate. So when these covenants are included in your loan agreement, you could make some efforts to negotiate some of these terms so that they're a bit more favorable to your business. So, for example, you may want to request that, okay, there is a prepayment flexibility that is included in your agreement, such that when you have enough funds, you can even pay down the debt. Although you need to bear in mind that in some instances where there is a clause on prepayment, where you are allowed to prepay, it comes at a cost. So you need to weigh those options and take that into consideration. You may also consider a covenant light structure. So for example, I mentioned interest rate coverage. Maybe they say it should be 4 times your EBITDA. You may want to negotiate and say, okay, let it be 2.5 times or 3 times EBITDA, depending on how things are in your business. So what I'm just saying here is, yes, when you get those loan agreements, you may also try to negotiate your position with the lender. I mean, it could swing to your favor as well. The next point is on you as a business also trying to ensure that you have different funding sources. So it could be from banks, it could be from DFIs, it could be through private credit, it could be through bonds. Don't just box yourself to a corner. Be adaptable and make sure that you have different sources that you can consider for funding purposes. And finally, align your debt with resilience planning. Make sure that you have liquidity buffers and maintain this within the organization. You could also have a cash reserve that you will set aside, or restricted cash that you will set aside for the purpose of settling your debt obligations. And then, as much as possible, monitor your loan obligations, your performance as well. You can have a dashboard that you use to track your debt maturity profiles. You'll track your compliance, your covenant compliance, and your refinancing needs. Don't just leave it to chance or say, okay, this is going to end in 2026. No, you need to monitor it. What are you doing? Are you meeting these covenants? Even those covenants itself, let it be. So implement it such that at the time you review your performance on a monthly basis, those are the benchmarks that you have. In fact, you can be a bit more prudent and say, okay, if my covenant, maybe interest coverage, for example, is 3 times EBITDA, I'm going to be doing 4 times, so that I'm sure that I meet the standard requirements to be able to satisfy my obligations on this facility. So all those things would help you as a business. I hope this information has been very helpful. All that I've mentioned, you now need to track it, you need to state it and put it out in your policy manual that you would work with as you go ahead. If your debt is maybe for 5 years or 7 years, you need a policy like this. You need something like this that would help you. Remember, it is not sacrosanct. It can change at any point in time, especially if maybe business is not even going as usual. You now need to think about how else are we going to be able to generate cash to pay down these obligations. So you need to be adaptable as a business, and you need to ensure that you track effectively. I hope this has been very helpful. Thank you once again for your time, and you have a great one.